Good morning, and thank you for joining me here, both in person and via live stream. My name is Tim O'Malley. I was recently appointed the Director of Program Integrity to help Minnesota address the issues of state program fraud. I'm going to offer a couple comments, a statement, and then I'll be happy to take any of your questions. Let me start with a reminder of not just the problem we're facing, but why I'm here. What was I asked to do, and maybe offer some context as to my role. Last December, the governor's office approached me to assist in identifying an achievable path for long-term fraud prevention, not quick fixes. Could underlying causes be examined? Could the identification of key contributing factors help us put together an actionable plan to deal with those causes to improve the state's approach to fraud prevention over the long haul? Why me? My understanding is I was approached because of my legal background and pertinent work history. I'm an attorney, I was a judge, I was a BC agent, I was an FBI agent, and as superintendent of the BCI, I led a state agency. I have worked on and been in charge of projects very similar to this one over the last 20 years, both in state government and with the Catholic Church. And with the Catholic Church, not just here in the Archdiocese, but throughout our country and globally. I think I was also approached because I'm not a political person. I have been appointed to state positions by two governors, one Republican and one Democrat. I agreed to engage in this project with a clear understanding that I would have the independence and autonomy to go wherever the facts may take me. I would not work on behalf of any individual or political party, but only in the interests of the people of Minnesota. The governor agreed to that, and he has not interfered or tried to influence my work in any way. Turning to the roadmap now, so how does that fit in? Its recommendations address a wide range of topics. Those recommendations arise out of the direct examination of contributing causes. Among the areas of improvement, leadership, process and controls, training, technology, state agency cultures, and stakeholder engagement. The roadmap offers a re-engineering to the state's approach so as to prevent and combat fraud in the future. It contains accurate information that is intended to help those in positions of power to make informed decisions and improve our current approaches. There is no quick fix. The state will have to continually adjust those approaches because when fraud prevention safeguards are implemented, we know that criminals will adapt. So while the roadmap addresses challenges known to us today, it also prepares us to anticipate and meet future challenges. To stay ahead, the state must maintain constant vigilance by performing ongoing assessments and then adjusting accordingly. The review undertaken to identify those contributing causes of fraud shows that going back to at least the 1970s, every administration and legislative body was put on notice of the vulnerabilities to the program integrity. Stronger prevention measures should have been taken. Repeatedly, plans were put in place but not executed effectively. Criminals have exploited those long-standing vulnerabilities to defraud our state, erode public trust, and impede the delivery of essential services to Minnesotans. That's unacceptable. Problems that are a half century in the making will not be solved easily. The causes are multifaceted. No single reform will suffice. The recommendations set out in the roadmap provide a basis for a workable improvement plan, the success of which will require coordinated and sustained effort. Achieving such success requires accountability for all. Without strict accountability, well-intended plans will again go unexecuted, and vulnerabilities in program integrity will persist. Public trust has been eroded, justifiably so. Minnesotans should have confidence that their tax dollars are being put to good use. Their money is intended, should be used as intended and only as intended. But the costs are not just financial. It's important to keep in mind the extent of the harm that the failure to stop this criminal activity has caused. There are Minnesotans in need of essential services. Impeding the delivery of those services causes harm and must not continue. Minnesotans deserve better. It is irresponsible for state government to allow taxpayer money intended to provide those services to vulnerable Minnesotans to end up in the hands of fraudsters. We can learn from the past. Both the executive and legislative branches have the opportunity to fix this. Policy and budget proposals are being considered and debated right now. The hope is that this roadmap will help inform the decisions being made by identifying those historical contributing causes and offering recommendations to address those causes. Lastly, I want to emphasize a pivotal key point for success. Everybody needs to be held accountable. Everybody. You're reading the roadmap a recommendation to appoint a skilled, independent monitor, someone with subject matter expertise and the requisite gravitas to drive home accountability. Implementing deliberate, actionable steps to prevent fraud will only succeed through effective enforcement. Otherwise, well-intended plans will again not be executed, changes will not become embedded, and today's opportunity to get this right will be lost. Happy to take any questions you have now.
Mr. O'Malley, I'm wondering...
one thing, if you could identify yourself and the media outlet you work for.
Lou Bragoose with KARE 11 News.
Thank you, Lou.
I'm curious what, candidly, you think were the main reasons that this fraud was able to balloon so much, even after dozens of indictments, as early as 2022 on the Phoenix major fraud case, countless news stories done showing fraud here and there. From the research you've done, what do you think are the main reasons it was able to continue and balloon in all these different programs?
Okay. Question has to be with why now? What's happened that resulted in the extent of the fraud taking place today, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it's important to go back to incrementally things were not done, literally for a half a century. This goes back to probably even earlier than the 70s, but you'll see in the report there's examples, especially of the legislative auditor, who does a nice job of laying out all these reasons. I think there's a couple contributing factors. If a number of people would have taken the steps earlier, that the vulnerabilities wouldn't be there today. Secondly, I think that there'll be a need for a cultural shift within the state, within state agencies. People engage in public service, from my observation, from meeting with people, because they care. They want to help the vulnerable. And I think there became a mindset of our job is more based on compassion than compliance, and that's misplaced. If state workers want to provide services, want to directly help people in need, then they should go work for a provider. They should deliver the wheelchairs. They should do the bed baths. They should take people to medical appointments. The state has a responsibility to make sure those things happen by protecting state payer money, by making sure that the money that is given to those that provide those services, that money goes for that. I think those were the contributing factors. Thanks.
Jim Rob Olson with Channel 9.
Yeah.
You say this goes back at least a half century, and in the whistleblower reports here, you document a lot of these things going
Mm-hmm.
back. How well known do you believe this was going back decades? Was it not as well known then as it is now, or does your findings show that people were well aware of this as far back as the 70s and 80s?
I can't imagine that people in leadership over the last 50 years were not aware of this. You've looked at the way they've been put on notice about this troubling trend. As the last question gave me the opportunity to say, it's happened now. It's blown up, no doubt. But I think it was It was maybe not as high a priority as it should have been. You know, every governor, every commissioner has their own priorities, but everybody was put on notice.
Tim, Renee Cooper with Channel 5, KSTP. We got a copy of a meeting recap from the OIG Coordinating Council that you're a part of.
I'm sorry, could you speak up just a little louder? I'm kind of hard of hearing. I'm sorry.
No problem. We had a report on a meeting recap notes from the OIG Coordinating Council saying that the council was seeking workable solutions versus Heather Gustafson's bill. We saw now last week that there was an amendment to delete everything introduced and that there was an introduction to have the governor appoint this independent statewide watchdog rather than an independent council to take away that independent investigatory power. I guess, was the OIG council a part of that amendment? Were you? And if so, why weaken the investigative and an independence of that office?
Why weaken what?
Why weaken the investigative power and the independence of that proposed statewide watchdog?
Okay. Question has to do with the appointment or potential appointment of a statewide Office of Inspector General and the debate going on about the different versions of that bill. First, let me clarify a little bit of my role compared with that of the OIGCC. I do attend those meetings to learn from them, to gather the information I needed, and to offer some advice. Their role is separate, though, than mine. My job was to look at you know, the history and come up with a broader plan. They are started before I was hired and will continue ongoing to get to the more specifics of how the recommendations in this roadmap can be practically implemented.
Well, then let me ask in this way that, you know, you mentioned that there needs to be this watchdog, this overseer, if you will, this independent monitor. What do you think of this independent statewide watchdog as proposed and passed 60 to 7 in the House, or in the Senate, excuse me, last year? What do you think of that as that option then?
Yeah, the question again goes back to the bill. It was last year's bill. Would that be effective in doing what's being recommended here, I think? Well, that was a year ago. We've learned more, first of all. I think it's critically important that somebody with independence and skill and the backbone to force this to go forward. Historically, we've seen well-intended people say, oh, here's the legislative auditor's report, here's what we're going to try and do, and plans were put in place, work groups were formed, legislation was passed, yet here we are today. It didn't work. So it's very important that there be an independent monitor to make this happen, whether that's a statewide Office of Inspector General or whether that's someone else hired in a role similar to mine to start carrying this forward. That's up to them to debate and decide.
But do you think that, and excuse me for hijacking here, do you think that the governor having the power to appoint that office would weaken the independence of that office?
Governor appointed me, and it didn't weaken anything I did. I think there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity, and the way it's going to happen, I think, is it has to be appointed by somebody. Okay, if it's the governor, and if the person appointed has the characteristics I described, and everybody's watching right now, if that person gets appointed and they're thwarted in any way, it'll be on the front page of the paper and it'll be on KSTP, right? So that gives us the leverage to do something. Now's the time. I mean everybody, the governor's office, the executive branch, legislature, providers, recipients, the general public, the media is watching. If we don't seize the opportunity now, there's a chance, I hope it doesn't happen, that 5 years from now we'll be here talking about the same stuff.
Tim, John Lordson from WCCO, you know, You're talking about, you've been on this for a couple months now, this role, correct? And you said this goes back 50 years. Is this what you thought you would see when you started looking into this? You know, obviously this packet's 56 pages long. Is it what you expected? Does it feel overwhelming to go through that? Or is it kind of what you anticipated?
Yeah, the question has to do with what I anticipated when I started this last month, and is the amount of information overwhelming? Was it shocking that it went back 50 years? I wasn't quite sure what to expect, to tell you the truth. I was aware of the issue at a high level. I wouldn't. It's been a long time since I've been stunned or shocked by almost anything, so it doesn't stun me. It disappoints in a lot of ways. The fact that this goes back so long is distressing. But again, I think now is the time that something very positive could come out of this. I will tell you that I have been impressed with the work being done right now, certainly within government at the agencies. Everybody I've met with has been forthcoming, been blunt and candid. They are skilled, and they are committed to public service. And that's not just within state government. I've met with providers, I've met with others, I've met with whistleblowers. Everybody is, I think, genuine about trying to fix this once and for all. And what we need is not some suggestion that, oh, if we just do this or if we just do that. It's going to take effort. It's, you know, in light of the events of yesterday at the Olympics, you got to think back that this all came about before the first miracle on ice. Some of you, I can look around, I was alive then and watched it, but some of you certainly weren't. So you put it in the historical perspective that all these things can be factored in, and now put together something that will not just sort of withstand the test of time, but that is adaptable, that is flexible. Do some things right now, but stay with it. Stay with it in a year, in 5 years. There's recommendations in there about people who, or not people, but processes where there'd be an annual check with someone to see, hey, have you done this? It didn't work. You know, we need to have, certainly in the immediate future, maybe this oversight council that's recommended, somebody to go and say, all right, here's the 8 things we said we do. Here's a timeline for that. Here's where I'm going to be in 1 month, in 3 months, in 5 months. And you get together every month or 2 months. And you say, all right, we said action items 1 through 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are right on track. 6 and 7 are not. Well, what are the obstacles? What do we do? Don't just talk about it, but make it happen.
Senator Quinn Gorham with Gray Media here.
A little louder, please.
I'm wondering if you could weigh in a little bit. We're in the first couple of days of the legislative session here. Have you had a chance to look at any of the proposals coming out of the legislature yet? Will you be weighing in on any of those proposals in the near future?
I have not looked at the proposals directly. When I started working on this, frankly, I thought it would take longer than it did, but in large part because of the cooperation I got and the willingness of people to jump in and make suggestions. Again, I looked at historically what has happened, those causes, and then tried to put together a framework for moving forward. The specifics of the bills right now and the debates, I haven't, frankly, had a chance to dig into those details, but I think the roadmap hopefully will provide some guidance to those decision makers. It has accurate facts in it, not sound bites, not some clever quick fix that's going to draw some short-term attention, but to roll up your sleeves and actually do the hard work, and that's going to require day-to-day work over a lot of time.
Tim, A.J. Legault from Carolina.
Yeah.
As you came in from the outside, you had to be able to put a finger on the scope of the problem to come up with solutions. How pervasive is the fraud in Minnesota?
How pervasive is the fraud in Minnesota is the question. It's well documented. It's extremely extensive. Extensive. And I don't know that the percent or the level of it is out of proportion for some other areas in the country. I'm not certain. I have looked at what other states are doing as part of the research, but it's a national problem, no doubt. And keep in mind that there will always be people committing fraud. That will always happen. The fraud triangle that's described in there, what motivates them, what underlies why they're criminals, the state can only do so much about that. But the vulnerabilities gave them the opportunity to do this. And that's where the state needs to focus its resources.
Minnesota's famous for creating work groups and sometimes, paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
How do you move past that and put workable fixes like you're describing in place?
Yeah, the question is, how do we move beyond having work groups and committees and so on, but actually make it work? There's a lot of specifics in there about things that need to be done. I think it goes back to the question a minute ago about the oversight. There needs to be someone, a point person, to look at this whole project and with the attention that's on it now and the transparency that should come to this, that will give that person the leverage to make it happen. But that person isn't going to do the work. We need to hold accountable commissioners, mid-level supervisors, and frontline workers. I think there has been inadequate accountability for some. Most of the state workers that I've met with have been doing their job, and they're working very hard at it. And they're doing a lot of things right now over the last 6 months, year. There's really a lot of good ideas out there, and the catch is going to be to prioritize those, provide the resources to make it happen, and then have that follow through. It will take some technology is going to take a while. You're not going to be able to put in something tomorrow that will have the ability to share information the way it has to be shared in real time, and technology will continue to advance. So that's a longer-term one. But starting right away, there can be a plan put in place and a level of accountability that hasn't happened up till now.
Tim, how confident are you that these recommendations will become requirements, and how soon could that be?
The question is, how confident am I that these recommendations will become workable and will make a difference? This is achievable. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind that this can be fixed. But it's going to take a concerted effort. It's going to take coordination within the state agencies. It's going to take action by the legislature. It's going to take everybody in the executive branch and the legislative branch to take responsibility for failures in the past and to come up with some of these recommendations, to prioritize those and fund them. It will also take, and this is right out there, it will also take input from the stakeholders, from providers and recipients. I've met with a number of providers, and we cannot put in place guardrails and measures that are overly burdensome on the legitimate providers. These services are essential, and they have ideas of how we can do that. I've met with a number. I said, if we had unannounced site visits and the requirement that your records are immediately available at a specific location, how troublesome would that be? Is that something? No. If somebody showed up tomorrow and said, I'm here to do a spot inspection, I would like to see your records from yesterday, I would like to, it might take me 5 minutes, a couple minutes to pull it up on the computer, whatever, I would welcome that. I would welcome that. Fraudsters would not welcome that, right? And I think the fact that some of that is even happening has a deterrent effect on those who want to try doing this. You know, there's always been theft, probably back to the caveman era, right? You read about it in charitable organizations, you read about it in corporate organizations, family members, You know, we all probably know somebody whose mother died, and then they find out, wait a minute, how come Jimmy got this money and I did? That's right. The idea is to put a spotlight on it and eliminate that opportunity.
Another question on some of those things that you just mentioned on the logistics. So like there was a legislative fraud hearing this morning, and some of the things they talked about is like, well, why don't you do more of those unannounced visits? And the answer was, well, for these autism programs, they're not licensed, and therefore by statute we can't do an unannounced visit. Like, did you see some of that like discrepancy from one program to the next? Where do you need more uniform? Is that part of the roadmap? And as far as implementing it, are you going to need like one bill, like a fraud roadmap bill to be passed in legislature, or are a lot of these things able to be done within the department without law changes?
Okay. A couple questions in there, I think. And if I don't remember them all, remind me, as I know you probably will. Would one comprehensive bill solve this? I leave that up to the legislature and the executive branch to decide. This is laid out there. I think there has to be a comprehensive approach. Now, whether that breaks down into different bills or not. The more specific question was, is there consistency across all the programs in terms of how they're being audited, how they're being held accountable? There is not. There is not consistency, and that should happen. The legislature will fund programs and fund services in a number of different ways. If it's through the traditional way, then built into that legislation is usually a 5 or 10% percent of the money being allocated can be used by the agency for oversight. If there's an RFP, for example, a request for proposal, that takes more effort on the start of, or it takes more resources on the part of different agencies. So there's a 10% built in. If it's a single source, then it might only be 5%. When the legislature does direct appropriations with some of the grants, with some other ways that funding goes out there, there is no overriding funding to help the agencies do their work. There are federal requirements, and there are state requirements, and there's also best practices. If an agency only has so many resources and they're required to do this, some agencies are doing what's required but would like to do more. And that has to be addressed, and there needs to be greater consistency across the board so that everybody who gets state money is held accountable. Thank you.
Direct appropriations as being you flag direct appropriations as being at a higher risk of fraud. Why is that?
If a piece of legislation provides money to a single source and they don't provide for the oversight needed to make sure that's taken care of, that the oversight takes place, then there's higher risk, right? And if there have been times when legislators rightfully represent their constituents, they think it's a good idea to get this money to this entity so they can provide a service in the community that's a valuable service. That's a good idea, and they should represent their clients or their constituents. They could call a commissioner, or they could check with the governor's office, or they could check with a mid-level supervisor. Can you give me an update on where we're at for posting the RFP or when the money might be available? That all makes sense. But when a legislature goes beyond that, when a legislator goes beyond that and exerts influence that may be undue, okay, say, listen, I've named this one, get the money out there. We got to do, well, I need to do my checks. No, there's a power imbalance there. Legislators decide agency budgets. I mean, let's be blunt about it. And it's not so subtle. I could really use help with this project of mine, you know, and boy, I'd like to help you with your budget next year if I could. That doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. It does happen. And we need to make sure that that's also addressed.
To sort of flip a question that you got from over here on its head, how much do you think could be done, say, by the executive branch just by one package of executive orders or one sweeping executive order regarding fraud?
How much could be done by a single executive order out of the executive branch?
What could be done without the legislature needing to sort of step in?
Well, there have been a couple executive orders, and they've made a difference. Things are improving. I'm looking at long-term, but an executive order is now. This will not be fixed without legislative support and insightful recommendations and prioritization of what needs to be done. I promise you. Go ahead.
Been answered already. With the practices of the state,
Real loud, please.
with the practices of the state over the last X amount of years since the 70s, were those practices unique to the state of Minnesota, or is this, those practices kind of widespread around the country, or was it just how things were done here?
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think I understand. Your question is the practices that have been followed over the last half a century, is that unique to Minnesota or not?
Yeah.
I don't think the practices are unique to Minnesota. I will tell you that the roadmap was designed on examining those practices here in Minnesota. I think other states may have faced different challenges, and again, I looked at some of their recommendations. The recommendations were usually at a high level, but I tried to, and the team I'm working with tried to put in place specific action steps that could respond to some of the problems here in Minnesota. Okay? Yeah.
Now, Tim, now that you've got a roadmap in place, what is next in your role? What do you do from here?
Well, I'm happy to continue advising. I plan to, I called the commissioners yesterday. Nobody has seen this report. The governor has not seen it. None of the commissioners have seen it until when you got it 20 minutes ago, whatever that was. I did offer to them, when you look at this, there's a lot in there, when you have a chance to digest it and think about it, I'm happy to meet with them individually or with their teams, attend a few work groups. At the coordinating council meeting on Thursday of this week, I gave them a heads up that I was intending to release this soon. I wasn't sure quite when it would be done. But that once I do that, if any of them, and I've met with almost everybody on that council one-on-one, if any of them have questions about what underlies this, help me understand this, how could we practically do that? I'm happy to help with that. But I think there are 3 phases to this. Mine was coming up with these suggestions. The second phase, I think there needs to be very soon someone who has the independence that I've had and has the skill set, knows about this, and has the gravitas to force this to happen and get this kick-started. Do things in the next 3 or 4 months. Do it while the legislature is in session, while everybody's watching, and get this going. And then the third phase is going to be long-term to embed it. And that's where the question that Renee had about, should it be an Office of Inspector General position? Should it be a longer-term external person? I think a comparison might be to consent decrees. You know, we've seen that happen with government agencies. Somebody independent who comes in and says, listen, I'm not reporting to that commissioner. I'm not friends with that legislator. I'm not working for the government or the governor. I might get paid with state money, but I really have to be independent if you want me to be honest with you and call it the way it is. Somebody has to call balls and strikes and not feel any concern about offending somebody or causing problems for any individual or any agency.
Could that be you, or are you done?
I'm done. Well, I'm not done entirely, but no, I have other things I'd like to do with my time.
A question, just about, if you don't mind, a granular question from within the report. We get asked all the time, how much of this fraud money are we able to get back? And you had a suggestion in there to use retired law enforcement and private investigators and offer them a percentage of what they can get back. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Sure. The question has to do with clawing back some of the overpayments or fraudulent payments, and sometimes it's a mistake by the provider. You know, this can be complicated, and I think there is in place at every agency the ability to help those providers who are genuine, who are sincere, but are making mistakes. Okay, And I've seen cases where that just happened. They put on the wrong billing code. They do whatever they got. They've been on notice. They pay the money back. The fraudster ones are different. So your question has to do with how can we more effectively get some of that money back. There have been times, and this goes to the compassion versus compliance comment I made a while ago. There have been times when, in the past, when there's money that's been identified as gone out the door, and it might not seem like a lot of money to some, but you only have so many resources. Should we dedicate that to continuing providing services, or do we have to be more aggressive and dedicate resources to getting that money back? One way to get that money back more efficiently, and there's a federal statute that I've seen it done with DEA, FBI, other federal agencies, where citizens, not law enforcement, can help track that money, identify where it's at, work with law enforcement to get that money back, and in return they get a cut of the amount of money returned. I think the federal statute puts it at 33%. So if we know that there's some fraudster who now has a home in Malibu or in Florida on the coast, and it appears to have been purchased with ill-gotten gains, why not use some retired federal or state investigators who know how to do that stuff? You can do it from your computer. And if the state doesn't have the resources to do it, rather than let all that money go out the door, get back 67%. There's retired IRS CID agents, there's retired FBI agents, there's retired Secret Service agents who have worked fraud for decades. Use their skill set.
Has there been a failure to call balls and strikes here in Minnesota when it comes to stopping fraud?
Has there been a failure to call balls and strikes when it comes to stopping fraud? There's been a failure to hold people accountable. And accountability goes both ways. It's not just getting somebody in trouble. It's not just discipline. It's also recognizing when people do a great job and letting that be known. But I think there's an opportunity to be more aggressive in making sure that the employees who are directly involved with overseeing these programs are doing their job. And by that I mean they have the skill set to do it. It may not be an employee's fault if they're put in a position where they're just not capable of doing this. Nobody's asked to be taller than they are. But there's also some that have, because of the compassion versus compliance culture that was in place for a while, I think there's some that just think, well, that the compliance part of it isn't quite as important as making sure that we take care of people. That mindset has to change. And that comes to first line and second line supervision. I mean, leadership clearly at the top, from the governor and commissioners, have to set that stage. But we need somebody day to day to say, listen, I know what that's not why we're here. Here's your specific task. Let's make sure it gets done. And if you're not capable of doing it because you don't have the skill set, then let me help find you a job that fits you. Or if it's because your attitude is laissez-faire, then you got to go. Any last questions?
Were many people held, was anybody fired? You know, we've asked the governor many times that question. When you researched, did you find anyone that actually was fired and held accountable?
I did. The question is, have people been fired for? I will tell you that in the research done, I have not found any evidence that there was corruption within the government, okay? There's a lot of talk, and you guys are all aware of the kickbacks that took place, of all that. I haven't seen that. I think the inadequacy of protecting our system is for the reasons we just talked about, that there's well-intended people who for a number of reasons, weren't effective in what they tried to do. I have looked at some cases in which there were allegations, not of criminal activity, but of violations of policy or misconduct. And the ones I've looked at, I was able to verify they were addressed and they were resolved. Okay, that process needs to stay in place. If more comes forward, and while everybody's talking about this, my guess is there may be more that come forward. And if that's the case, then they need to be dug into like the ones that we've uncovered have been dug into.
Tim, one last thing, getting back to something you mentioned before throughout this, is that do you think going back decades over multiple agencies, multiple department heads, that there was a fear of harming people who legitimately need the help, but that more strict safeguards would maybe harm people that need it, and that led to the laissez-faire attitude?
Okay, the question has to do with if in the past there were concerns that if too strict of safeguards were put in place, vulnerable Minnesotans wouldn't get the services they need, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a concern about that. I think the important thing moving forward is to involve those providers, involve people in it. We can deter the criminals and still provide those services. That is achievable. That is achievable. And I think, again, some of the projects underway right now are trying to get that balance, okay? And that has to be thought out very carefully. And I think the opportunity to do that is right now.
Thank you.
Thank you all.